Chapter 21. Teresa looked through her clothes, having trouble picking out what to wear. Donald had invited her out for a walk in the park. She'd asked if Kenzie could come with her, and was a little bit surprised when he said yes. She was even more surprised when he'd agreed to take a walk in Slithering Gulch Park, the same park where secret Hitler flyers had been found the night before. Carol had told them about spotting a secret Hitler operative in the park, but not about the gang that chased her, and even though the odds of catching another secret Hitler member in the same place a day later was slim, Teresa still wanted to go to the park and see if anything happened. She tried to tell herself that she was still doing this just to investigate secret Hitler, but as she went through her clothes to try to pick out a pretty outfit to wear, her thoughts kept returning to Donald's interest in her and fantasies about things turning romantic between the two of them. She had asked if Kenzie could come specifically to keep herself from being tempted to act on those fantasies, but she still wanted to look good for him. She picked one of the few dresses she owned, one that came down to just above her knees and was tied around her chest, hoping it would do the trick. It was a blue and gray knit dress that was just a little tight on her and probably made for someone a little shorter and smaller than her, but it showed off her curves and it was stretchy enough to feel comfortable despite being kinda tight. She had originally bought it because it had pockets woven into it, and finding a dress with pockets was never easy, but it was one of the sexiest outfits she owned, and she hoped it would do the trick. Teresa considered wearing makeup, but decided against it. She wore makeup so rarely that she barely knew how to put it on, usually asking Kenzie for help whenever a special occasion came up and she felt obligated to wear it. Kenzie didn't wear makeup very often either, but she used to wear it more before they started dating, and her smaller fingers were much better at applying it than Teresa's. She also knew Kenzie would notice if she wore makeup, and she'd be concerned enough by the dress Teresa chose. She picked out a pair of knee-high white socks with blue stripes to cover her shins so she wouldn't have to shave her legs, which she also didn't do often, and hoped the little bit of leg hair that might be showing wouldn't be noticeable since it was blonde and very light. She still felt a little bit insecure as she looked in the mirror, but she looked about as good as she thought she could get away with. Teresa struggled with her mixed feelings of wanting to get closer to Donald and finally experience romance and perhaps even something sexual with a man, and her love for Kenzie and fear that she'd make her girlfriend jealous. She put her keys, wallet, and phone in her pockets and went out to the living room to hang out with Kenzie for a bit before it was time to leave. Kenzie was wearing form-fitting yoga pants and a tight t-shirt with a picture of Athena and her owls on it, as well as a necklace of pink and red stones including rose quartz, carnelian, garnet, and rhodonite. Teresa only remembered the names because Kenzie had made her a similar necklace as an anniversary present, claiming the stones would help solidify their love. One of her decks of tarot cards was sitting on the coffee table. "You're looking sexy," Kenzie said with a smile, and Teresa was a little bit surprised that she didn't sense any jealousy from her. "Thanks." Teresa sat next to her on the couch, and Kenzie cuddled up next to her, wrapping her arms around her and nestling her cheek against Teresa's breast. "You look good, too." "Not as good as you, babe." Kenzie gave her a squeeze, and she could feel Kenzie's love for her, but she was a bit worried that Kenzie would sense her mixed feelings about Donald and their date tonight. When Kenzie released the hug, she picked up her tarot cards and shuffled the deck a few times, then set it back down on the table. "Cut the cards. My spirit guides just had me do a reading for myself, and your guides are telling me you need one too." "Okay." Teresa nervously leaned forward, picked up part of the deck, set it down, and set the other cards on top of it. She had thought tarot readings were silly before she met Kenzie, but her fortunes often came true. Kenzie took the deck and set the top card face down on the table, followed by a card to the left of it and a card to the right of it. Kenzie flipped over the middle card first to reveal the Two of Cups, where a man and woman were exchanging two chalices with a pair of serpents rising out of them and twisting around each other. "The Two of Cups, the card for healthy relationships." "I remember that one. It's come up a couple times whenever something positive is happening in our relationship," Teresa commented. "It came up in my reading, too," Kenzie said. "Our experiences so far with the Asatru people have been, well, interesting, to say the least. Whatever happens tonight and in the coming weeks as we keep investigating them, it's only going to deepen our relationship." Teresa wondered if that meant that things wouldn't work out with Donald, and felt a pang of disappointment as Kenzie flipped over the card to the left, revealing the High Priestess, which was a woman in a dark blue robe sitting between dark and light pillars, with a glowing purple orb over her forehead, a cross-shaped green burst of energy emanating from the center of her chest, and her hands clasped together in front of her belly with an orange glow emanating from them. "I recognize that one, too," Teresa said, a bit surprised that familiar cards were coming up. "That one usually represents you, and, the intuitive connection we share." "Yes!" Kenzie rubbed Teresa's knee excitedly. "The central theme card was our relationship, and what lies beneath is our spiritual bond." Kenzie flipped over the card on the right, and her face lit up even more as she revealed the Knight of Swords. "Oh, I got this one in my reading, too! What a serendipitous occurrence! Geez, they must have stayed together while getting shuffled, and you went right to them." Teresa wasn't familiar with that one. The card featured a knight holding a shining sword high and riding on a horse that was leaping into the air. "That looks exciting." She wondered if the card might have something to do with Donald after all. "Very exciting," Kenzie exclaimed. "The Knight of Swords represents seizing the moment, taking direct action, being daring and brave, being a champion or hero. It could represent a big opportunity, or the fact that we're taking a daring risk tonight by trying to get Donald alone to see if he lets any secrets slip." Kenzie turned toward Teresa, placing one of her knees on the couch so she could rise up to eye level with her. "With my brave knight to protect me, I'm sure we'll make it through whatever Donald has in store for us and come out stronger with real progress towards our goals." She leaned in and planted a firm kiss on Teresa's lips, wrapping one arm around her shoulders as the other gently grubbed her breast. Teresa returned the kiss, feeling more confident that her situation with Kenzie would be just fine, but wondering if there was more to that last card than she realized. Teresa gave Kenzie's butt a squeeze, and Kenzie pulled back from the kiss with a giggle. "I love you. It's almost time to go. Are you ready?" "Yeah, I think so." Teresa double-checked the contents of her pockets before standing up. "Hold on, let me go grab one more thing." She went into her room and had to search for a minute for the necklace of pink and red stones Kenzie had given her and slipped it around her neck. "All right, let's go." Kenzie followed her to the door. "Oh, did the Queen of Cups come up in your reading at all?" "Yeah, it was the center card, with the Knight of Swords to the left and the Two of Cups to the right," Kenzie replied. "Why?" Teresa grinned to herself, trying to hide it from Kenzie. "Just curious." The first time she'd gotten a reading from Kenzie, the Queen of Cups had been the central card, and it seemed to represent her as a person in some of her other readings, just as the High Priestess had sometimes represented Kenzie. She wondered if the Knight of Wands, rather than representing Teresa as Kenzie had assumed, instead represented Donald. Teresa couldn't stop smiling as they walked to the car. They chatted a little bit on the drive to the park, preparing themselves to impress Donald in the hopes that he'd reveal more of his secrets to them and give them more clues about Secret Hitler. As they pulled into the parking lot by the playground, Kenzie saw Donald's car already parked there, with no other cars in the lot. The sun was low in the sky, but it was still light enough out that the streetlights hadn't come on yet. Donald got out of his car as they parked, walking over to greet them as they got out of their car. "Hey, good to see both of you." He gave Teresa a good long hug, and when Kenzie offered a hug too, he tried not to hug her for quite as long, but she didn't let him get away too quickly. Teresa noticed and thought it was a bit odd, but perhaps Kenzie was trying to tempt Donald too in the hopes that it would help in making him talk. Teresa asked, "So this is the park where Secret Hitler put up a bunch of stickers last night, right?" "Yeah," Donald confirmed. "Supposedly they were all over the place, but," he looked around, "I'm not seeing any here now. Maybe there are still some deeper into the park." Kenzie glanced at the playground equipment. "I'm surprised there aren't a bunch of kids out here playing. It's a nice afternoon." Donald shrugged. "People aren't having as many kids anymore, and it's not as nice a neighborhood as it used to be. The people who do have kids are keeping them inside to stay safe. Just a sign of the times, unfortunately." Teresa sighed. "That's too bad. I loved places like this when I was a kid." "No sense in letting it go to waste," Kenzie said, skipping over to the swing set and sitting on one of the swings. Donald chuckled as he watched her back up and then let herself swing forward. "I didn't think she was that playful." "She lets her childish side out around people she feels safe with," Teresa replied, then thought about what she just said. Was Kenzie starting to change her mind about Donald, or was she putting on an act? Had she seen something more in her reading than she was letting on? Maybe she was confident they really would find out something about Secret Hitler tonight. Despite their connection, Teresa couldn't quite tell, but Kenzie was giving them a playful look. "It's good for women to have a bit of a childish side," Donald told her. "Makes them better with kids. You can go play for a little while, too, if you want." Teresa's mind went blank for a moment when he mentioned kids. She hadn't thought about having kids for years since she'd been with Kenzie, and had never really had enough interest from men to feel like she had a chance with anyone who'd make her a mom. She paused for a bit before figuring out how to respond. "I dunno, I'm probably a little too big for that." Donald shook his head. "Nah, I'm sure the swings can handle you. Besides, you're gonna give some lucky guy a big strong son someday." He reached over and tickled her belly through her dress. "Don't be afraid to be a little bit childish sometimes to practice for playing with your kids." Teresa's mind froze again when he talked about her having babies. He really was into her. It was a lot for her to process. Finally she said, "I might need a little push." "Sure." Donald placed his hand on her back and gave her a gentle push towards the swings, then followed her to the swing set and got behind her and Kenzie. As Teresa sat down, he grabbed the swing and pulled her back. "Ready?" She made a little noise to confirm, and he gave her a good push, then stepped behind Kenzie and caught her swing, pulling her back and giving her a good push too, making her swing higher than she had before. "Whee!" Kenzie exclaimed, and as Donald pushed them on the swings, Teresa let her self-consciousness go and tried to have some fun too, laughing and squealing along with her girlfriend for a few minutes as Donald pushed them. When Donald finally took a break from pushing them, he looked to the west. "What a beautiful sunset." Teresa and Kenzie looked too, and Teresa spent some time just staring at it in wonder. Teresa couldn't remember the last time she'd felt as good as she did in that moment, having fun with the two of them, feeling a sense of belonging that she rarely felt with anyone but Kenzie, feeling a sense of wonder at the sunset's beauty that came out far stronger because of how she felt. Kenzie stopped swinging to watch the sunset with them for a bit before saying, "I guess we better start walking before it gets too dark too." "All right." Donald agreed and started walking towards the trail as Kenzie and Teresa got up from their swings to follow him. They walked behind him, and Teresa couldn't help trying to check him out, though his shirt and pants were just loose enough that she couldn't see much. Still, he seemed like he was in good shape, maybe a little chubby and without much muscle definition aside from his forearms, but tall and definitely not weak, since he was able to push and pull her on the swings with ease. His arms were thick and looked solid and muscular, even if they lacked definition. The fact that his long hair and beard were somewhat wild and untamed made her feel less self-conscious about her own appearance. Even though he wasn't particularly attractive, she cared more about how her partner made her feel than how her partner looked, and she felt a lot safer walking with him when she didn't stop to think about the groups he was part of. Kenzie and Donald were a little more focused on the sights and sounds of nature around them, occasionally pointing out squirrels, rabbits, and birds moving through the trees around them as they walked the path through the park. The fact that they seemed to be bonding a little more gave Teresa a little twinge of jealousy, but also a sense of relief. She started to think about what could happen if the three of them somehow— "Squirrel!" she blurted out as she suddenly noticed the little brown animal sprint through the underbrush and up a tree trunk in the slowly dimming twilight. Kenzie added, "Cute little squirrel!" Donald smiled. "Almost as cute as the way the two of you act." "Shush!" Teresa said as she blushed a bit. She did not think of herself as cute. Even Kenzie never called her that, and it didn't seem like the right word to describe her, but she appreciated the compliment despite rejecting it. As they approached the bridge and cut through the middle of the park, Teresa noticed a black man in a red bandana on the overpass above looking down on them. She didn't think much of it until the man looked down at them and suddenly turned and walked away. Seeing him made her feel a little bit uneasy for some reason, but Donald and Kenzie didn't seem to have noticed, and it didn't seem like a reason to interrupt their fun. They could still see pretty well in the slowly waning twilight, but with the streetlights on the bridge above, the path under the bridge was rather dark in comparison. It looked like there was plenty of room, but Teresa pulled her phone out to turn on her flashlight anyway, since there was no railing along the side of the path and it looked like a steep hill down to the stream below. As she shined the light on the concrete wall on the other side of the path, they could clearly see plenty of gang graffiti, which added to the slowly building feeling of unease in Teresa. Donald noticed the graffiti and sighed. "Such a shame that we let our cities look like this." Kenzie frowned. "It's even worse when they do it at a park. Can't they leave places like this alone?" Teresa moved the light along as they walked and noticed a sticker still on the wall. "Hey, what's that?" The three of them came to a stop in front of one of the Nova stickers that had apparently been missed by whoever went through and removed the rest of them. "Make America white again. Nova. Who's Nova?" "Oh, they're one of the groups Tony hangs out with," Donald said. "I guess they put stickers up here too at some point." Teresa asked, "Were they helping Secret Hitler put up stickers here?" She had seen what Carol posted in the chat, but wanted to see if Donald knew or offered up any information they didn't already have. Donald said, "I don't think anyone knows who's behind Secret Hitler yet, as much as we might like to." Teresa was disappointed that he didn't tell her anything new, but part of her also hoped that meant he wasn't involved with Secret Hitler. As they were standing there, two dark figures appeared at each end of the path under the bridge. When Teresa turned to continue on down the path, she gasped in surprise as she turned the light and saw two black men in red shirts wearing red bandanas blocking their path. She momentarily panicked and turned around only to see two more black men dressed similarly blocking the way they came from. "Look at what we have here," one of the black men blocking the path forward said. "A couple white bitches and a pussy-ass motherfucker." He pulled a handgun from his waistband as he approached and pointed it at them, holding it at an angle with bad form, though Teresa was too frightened and intimidated as she turned the light back on him to think about how bad his grip on the gun was. "Give me all your money, motherfuckers." Donald sprinted towards him at an angle, and the man turned the gun towards him and pulled the trigger, missing and hitting the concrete wall. Donald leapt into a jump kick, hitting the man in the chest and causing him to drop the gun. Teresa didn't have a chance to see what happened next as one of the black men grabbed her from behind, and the other man behind them grabbed Kenzie. As panic overtook her, Teresa flailed wildly, breaking free from the man's grip but dropping her cell phone. It landed face down with the flashlight pointing up and giving just enough light for her to make out her attacker. The man who grabbed Kenzie started pulling her away down the path, and Teresa tried to shove the man who'd grabbed her to go after Kenzie, but he was too strong for her to knock him over. He grabbed her wrists and she twisted and squirmed, breaking free from his grip and grabbing him instead. She had no training and basically no experience fighting, but she was half a foot taller than him and big enough that he had a lot of difficulty controlling her. She heard a loud gunshot that sent her adrenaline into overdrive, but she didn't have time to turn and look to see what happened. She couldn't even take the time to worry about Donald as she struggled to keep the man attacking her from taking control of her. She heard another gunshot and heard footsteps approaching quickly from behind. The man she was wrestling with tried to twist out of her grasp, and she swung him to the side into the concrete wall. "Hey, stop or I'll kill her!" the man dragging Kenzie away said with a knife in his hand. Another gunshot went off, and Kenzie screamed. The man Teresa was pushing into the wall looked terrified and started begging for his life. "Please, please, I got $20. You can take it. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me." Teresa let go of him and stepped back, taking a moment to look around. Kenzie's face was covered with blood, and she was staring in terror at the body on the ground next to her. The lower half of the body was in the darkness of the tunnel, but the top half was lit up enough under the lights from above to see that there was a hole in the face and a pool of red around the head. Teresa gasped and turned to look the other way, where Donald stood there with the gang member's gun, pointing it at the man who'd attacked her. Behind him, she could see two more dark shapes on the ground that she didn't want to look too closely at. Donald said, "You want to live? Grab that body and throw it in the river. Kenzie, take a few steps away from it." Kenzie just stood there with her mouth open. "Kenzie, step back!" Kenzie followed his order, clutching her chest as she backed away. The gang member said, Okay, I'll do it, just don't shoot me!" He held his hands out defensively as he slowly walked over to the body of his dead partner, made a horrified face, but grabbed his legs, dragged him to the hill, and flung him down into the river below. "Teresa, pick up the light." Donald's commanding voice broke through the multitude of thoughts and feelings fighting inside Teresa. She knelt down, grabbed her phone, and stepped out of the way as Donald added, "Those two, throw them in too." The black man was crying as he walked past her, grabbed the legs of a man he must have known, and flung him down the hill into the river. Teresa was conflicted by the empathy she felt for him. On the one hand, he'd just lost 3 friends and was probably terrified that Donald would shoot him anyway. On the other hand, he'd just attacked her for no reason. One of his friends just attacked her girlfriend, and his friends just attacked Donald. She turned and saw Donald sighting down the gun at the gang member as he grabbed the last of his friends and started dragging the body down the path away from them, seemingly trying to delay throwing the body in and put some space between himself and the gun Donald stared down the sights of. The sword from the tarot card she'd seen earlier flashed into her head as she turned the light on the man, realizing this was the moment that required daring and bravery the cards had predicted, and that it was Donald who saved them, rather than Donald being the danger that Teresa would have to save Kenzie from. Her heart stopped for a brief moment as the gun went off again, causing the man to fall back, pulling the body down just enough for it to slowly tumble down into the river with him. "We should go." Donald started breathing more heavily now that the threat had been dealt with, and he had time to stop and recover. As horrified as Teresa was by what had just happened, she couldn't help but be turned on by the man who'd just saved her. She wanted to rush over and throw her arms around him, to thank him for saving her, but she heard Kenzie whimper and felt her remorse and relief. Teresa wrapped her arms around Kenzie, prioritizing comforting her girlfriend and calming her down over her own need to be comforted. She was also a little bit afraid of what Donald might do if she made any sudden moves towards him. Donald turned towards them and slowly walked over to them, wrapping his arms around both of them and squeezing tightly, resting his head against Teresa's shoulder. "I'm so glad you're both okay. I was so scared that something might happen to you." He looked up and gave Teresa a little kiss on the chin, then gave Kenzie a kiss on a clean spot on top of her head. He held them there for a few seconds before finally releasing them. "Okay, we need to get out of here. If anyone heard those gunshots, the police will be on their way. I don't want to have to explain this to the cops, and I definitely don't want to risk getting arrested for a hate crime for defending us. Do you have something to clean the blood off her face with?" Kenzie shook herself and pulled a couple tissues out of her pocket. Teresa took them from her and wiped her face off, getting almost all of the blood. "Should I throw them in the river too?" Donald shook his head. "No, we'll throw them away somewhere else. Pocket them for now. I'll worry about the gun, too." He clicked some switch on the side of the gun and then put it in the back of his waistband. "Let's go." "Okay." Teresa was too shaken to do much other than follow his lead. She turned her flashlight off and put her phone back in her pocket. Then Donald grabbed her and Kenzie by the hand and started jogging towards their cars. He released their hands after a little bit, but kept looking back to make sure they were keeping up with him as the three of them jogged back up the path between the trees and the river. When they reached their cars, Donald turned to them. "Are you okay to drive?" Kenzie stopped jogging and panted for a couple seconds before replying. "Yeah, I think so." She lunged forward and gave him another hug. "Thank you for saving us." "Yeah, of course." Donald hugged her back. "I'll follow you back to your place." Teresa momentarily panicked, realizing that if he came to their place, there were things that could give away the fact that they were a lesbian couple. "Could you maybe pick up food for us on the way? I'll text you the address." "Yeah, sure," Donald replied, but pushed Kenzie out of the hug. "We should go, though." "Okay." Kenzie pulled her keys out, and they all got in their cars and drove away. Teresa texted him the address as they were headed down the next block, and looked up in time to see 4 cop cars headed towards the park. "Looks like we got away just in time." Kenzie nodded. "Yeah, holy shit, that was terrifying. How are you thinking about food at a time like this?" Teresa looked at her. I wasn't really. We need to hide the rainbow flag and make sure we don't have anything else out that would give us away." "Oh, shit!" Kenzie shook her head. "I wasn't even thinking about that." She grabbed Teresa's hand, squeezing it while keeping the other on the steering wheel. "Thank you." "Yeah." Teresa held Kenzie's hand as they drove home. They made it home with enough time to take the rainbow flag off their wall and hide it in a drawer. Teresa had some Yuri manga sitting on a shelf that she also hid away. They were looking through their apartment and making sure there was nothing else sitting out that might give them away when the buzzer went off, letting them know Donald was there. Teresa buzzed him in and opened the apartment door. Moments later, Donald was there carrying a Popeyes bag. He walked in and set it on the table. "I just grabbed a thing of chicken tendies. Hopefully that's okay. I was gonna go to Chick-fil-A, but I forgot they're closed on Sundays." He sat in the middle of the couch and pulled the box out of the bag, opening it up for them as Teresa sat next to him. "Maybe I shouldn't have gotten fried chicken considering we just got attacked by a bunch of niggers, but that's current year for you." Teresa chuckled as she sat down next to him. After what just happened, she wasn't going to give him shit for making racist jokes. Kenzie actually laughed too, even though the little bit of blood still on her face made for a grim sight. Kenzie said, I needed a laugh after what we just went through, but I think I need a hug and some cuddling, too. She looked over at Teresa and asked, Is it okay if we both cuddle with him? Teresa nodded. Yeah, I need it too. That was a lot to go through. Thank you for saving us. Teresa put her arm around Donald's shoulders and pulled him into a side hug. Donald leaned his head against her breast and hugged her back as she caressed his back and neck. You're so soft and comfy. Kenzie approached a little cautiously and was about to sit on his other side when Donald looked up at her and patted his lap. Here, come sit. Kenzie sat in his lap and Donald grabbed her legs and pulled them sideways onto Teresa's lap so she was partly sitting on both of them. Teresa wrapped her other arm around her girlfriend's legs as she watched her girlfriend lean up against the guy that was leaning up against her. There you go. That way we can all cuddle together while we calm down from what happened. Kenzie rested her head on the crook of Donald's neck, and Teresa felt another exhausting flood of emotions. She was so happy about how things were turning out that tears started to form in her eyes, but she was still worried that things could get messy if they tried to pull Donald into their relationship, even though she was completely ready to admit to herself that it was what she wanted, now that he'd saved their lives. As much as she wanted it, she was still afraid of how he'd handle the truth about them. She could sense that Kenzie wanted it too, and as she noticed the tarot cards sitting out on the table, she realized that this was exactly what the cards said would happen, and she felt reassured. Teresa rubbed her hand up and down Donald's back as he pressed himself against her. He had one arm around Kenzie's back, holding her comfortingly, while his other hand found the hand Teresa had placed on Kenzie's knee and held it gently. She leaned down and kissed him on top of his head, and watched as Kenzie did something brave. She leaned forward and planted a kiss on his lips. Donald looked pleasantly surprised, even when Kenzie pulled back and giggled a bit. Your mustache is ticklish. Sorry, Donald replied. Kenzie exclaimed, No, it's fine, I like it. Donald looked up at Teresa with a little bit of worry in his eyes, and Teresa decided to be brave too. She leaned down and planted a kiss on his lips, feeling his facial hair tickle her too. She loved it, and he kissed her back passionately, but looked even more surprised when she finally released the kiss, especially when Kenzie leaned in for another turn. The two of them took turns making out with him for a little while, and Teresa got a strange pleasure out of watching the two of them together. She wanted to take a turn kissing Kenzie, too, but she wasn't sure how Donald would react to that. When they finally took a little break from making out, Donald looked back and forth between each of their eyes and said, I know I just saved both your lives, but I still feel like a bit of a scoundrel for kissing both of you on the same night. We don't mind, Teresa reassured him. You're our hero. She could sense that Kenzie was feeling a bit guilty, though, not about kissing him, but about all the things they hadn't told him. There's something we should tell you. Teresa realized they wouldn't be able to hide their reasons for joining the Asatru group if they told him the truth about their relationship. Multiple things, actually. Please don't be mad. Tears started to well up in Kenzie's eyes, and Teresa could feel her growing worry as they were about to reveal their secrets to him. Donald looked at them curiously. What could possibly make me mad at the two of you at a time like this?